I really let you know that the main purpose of this class is because 4 years ago, Dr. Ashley and I, actually it was my big project was to start educating on cancer. It became my passion project, and I studied cancer for 3 years before I gave my first class on cancer. And the first year we taught a class on cancer over here in one of the office spaces, and we had 30 people show up. And then the second year we rented the Oxford Hotel and had 50 people show up. And then we rented the Shiloh Inn and had around 50 or 60 people show up for that event. And the real reason we keep doing this is because one day we're going to rent the Tower Theater, and we're going to fill the Tower Theater up. And nobody likes the word cancer. It's probably, well, it's like a curse word. I just tell people it's the C word. And they usually know what I'm talking about when I say, you know, the big C, the C word. It's a sensitive topic, and there's very few words in the healthcare model that are as charged as that word. If you don't want people to come to your class, tell them you're going to talk about cancer. Right? It's true.
There would be a lot of people that would be interested.
And I would have told you, if you asked me how many people were coming, I would have said probably less than 5.
Wow.
I've taught these mini cancer classes long enough to know that people are so afraid of that word that they won't show up to learn how to not have it.
You would think they would, because I've had it, I don't want it back.
You would think that, and I would tell you that the number one cause of death in the United States is not heart disease, diabetes, it's not cancer, it's not properly prescribed drugs, it's lack of education. It's the number one cause of death is stupidity. Harvard did a study on that, and they actually used the word stupidity. Stupidity takes more lives than anything else. So I'm not saying that people are stupid, I'm just saying that this is so emotionally charged that people will not show up to learn anything about it. And I did a little experiment today. Almost every single one of my patients, I said, I'll see you at class tonight. And they said, what's it on? And I said, well, I'm going to teach you how to have more life and not have to worry about cancer. And they just look at me and go, I'm not coming. Did you hear any of that?
Yeah.
I don't want to come to that. I don't want to come to that. I don't want to come to that. Okay. Yeah, so I've experimented with it, and I know that there's no way that we'll ever fill the Tower Theater if we use that word from a marketing standpoint. And that's okay. But the reality is we can't continue to hide from it and run from it, because 1 in 3 are going to have it. Okay? And if we do, we need to recognize that cancer treatment of the future, and I say now is the future, is gentle, loving, serving, and guiding, where a person is diagnosed or not diagnosed, because the diagnosis can be as debilitating or more debilitating than the actual cancer itself, because all of us in this room have cancer right now, including me. Okay? Thousands of cancer cells a day are being destroyed. I mean destroyed by my immune system. As I'm speaking, cancer cells are being destroyed. And just in the same way that my body is fighting cancer cells, so is yours if you've been diagnosed with it. It's how the body works. So cancer treatment of the future is soft, gentle, kind, loving, and serving, where people maybe get diagnosed or maybe not, and they sit among their family and heal with natural health care providers and their loved ones, and they resonate these frequencies that allow the body to heal. Every form of cancer, in my opinion, based upon my research and reading, every single form of cancer clinically can be healed. Spiritually can be healed, and medically can be healed. And there's no reason that we should be as afraid of that word as we are. Okay? So the only thing stronger than fear is hope. Okay? And I profoundly mean that. And if you've been to any of my detox classes, you'll know that I profoundly believe there's 3 types of people. Okay? There's people who make things happen. There's people who watch things happen. And there's people that wonder what the hell happened to me. And I mean this, I'm very serious when I say this. I want every single person in my tribe to never be this person that wonders what happened. I mean that so passionately that I'm going to tell you the truth, right? Sandy and I were just at a seminar over the weekend. We flew down to Carlsbad together, and I've heard this over and over and over and over again for the past 6 years by one of my mentors, and he says, what gives you the right to know a truth and not share it? So if I say something that is not what you've heard before about cancer or not congruent with the medical paradigm, it's okay. It's what I know to be true based upon my experiences. Okay, and I don't ever want any of my tribe, family to be the type of people that have to wonder what the heck happened to me. And the saddest part about this is this happens to my family, this happens to your family, and it happens to people that you love. And I recognize that the people that you love the most are sometimes the people that you can help the what? Least. I experience it right now in my own family. I have brothers. Some of my brothers get it. Some of my brothers don't get it. I love them the same way, and I wish that we all would get it and sit around and sing Kumbaya together and be happy and healthy. But it's just not reality. There's 2 reasons people don't get healthy. Choice, number 1, and free will, number 2. And if it hurts your feelings, I'm sorry. I'm telling you the truth. Because I have thousands of patients in this Bend community, and only a certain percentage of them choose to get healthy on a regular basis. If you open that door right there, you'll see boxes of patient files of inactive patients, and it breaks my heart, and I cry every time I walk by them almost. And I leave them there so I can be reminded that those are the people who I have not been able to educate for, and it's not always my fault. Sometimes it's choice, and sometimes it's free will, that they just aren't ready for the message. But I leave them there, so every time I walk into that door, I have to walk by those 6 boxes full to the brim overflowing with patients who have not been properly educated. And remember, the major cause of death in the United States is not cancer, heart disease, diabetes, or overly prescribed drugs. It's stupidity or lack of proper information. Information without implementation leads to depression. Okay? I'm going to give you some tips tonight, and I don't want you to leave here feeling depressed, so I'm going to give you some tips. Take one of the tips I give you and implement it so that you're not going to be the type of person that leaves here going, dang, I knew I shouldn't have went to that class on the big C. Leave here going, okay, cool. I have a tribe. I have people who love me and support me. They're not going to be the people who wonder what happened. We're going to be people who make things happen. Okay? The truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Just let it loose and it will defend itself. And as a natural holistic healthcare provider who understands the value and the purpose of the body's innate resonance to heal all sickness and disease on its own without human intervention or interference, leads me sometimes to feel like this. Okay? And in healthcare, I'm speaking with you, not at you, we feel like this sometimes. I have my own stories that I could sit down and, drain a coffee pot with you in about, 2-3 hours, sharing with you my own experiences of how the system has literally brutally beaten me up, and I feel like that sometimes. Okay? My own personal health, my patient's health, and it's okay because the truth can defend itself, and this is a perfect example. I saw this picture and I was like, man, that's great. Because we can feel like this sometimes on our own healing journey, and we can feel like this sometimes when we have a message so powerful, we want to share it with everyone we know, and everyone we know that we share it with, we go, oh my gosh, I'm screaming it from the rooftops, and everyone just goes, you're crazy, I don't believe you, and I'm going to go do this. And you're like, no, why would you do that? Listen to me, I love you more than they love you. And they still choose to do something because of choice and free will. Okay? The goal of this class tonight is to provide you with some insight so that when you leave here, you can feel a little bit more empowered about where you're at. Okay? I'm going to skip through lots of these slides to get to the really good juice here. But nonetheless, this is when we started our war on cancer. Okay, it happened 2 days before Christmas back in the Nixon presidency, 1971. Some of you guys remember this. 2 days before Christmas, Nixon declared a war on cancer. And he said, I want this signing of this declaration to be my most significant, or I want this to be the most significant action taken in my presidency. He said, I want to be remembered as the guy who declared war on cancer because he said, we will beat this. Okay. Back in the early 1900s, if there was a case of cancer, doctors were called from states far and wide to come see the tumor. Okay, there's one doctor who writes about this. He said, we came in from hundreds of miles to see a cancer patient, and the doctor stood before the patient with a whole bunch of other clinicians around and said, men and women, remember this because you might never see this again. And now they say, well, 1 in 3 of us are going to deal with this. Okay, so anytime you declare a war on something, you can't win. It's the first flaw in declaring war on terror, war on cancer, war on opioid. You're never going to win if you're fighting, right? So we know this, don't we? Right? You can't win. Nobody wins when you go to war. Everyone loses, okay? So this was the turning point when we knew that there was a major issue. And long before the turning point, we actually, I say we, science and the alternative community, really understood how to beat cancer. It was just suppressed. And don't take my word for it. Look at the other research out there. Otto Warburg was discovering how oxygen therapies could be used to treat cancer. And I'll come back to that, Otto Warburg. We're talking back in the 30s and 40s. They knew a solution for cancer. And the reason that President Nixon felt so confident with cancer, that they were going to beat it, is because shortly after they revealed the Human Genome Project, where they mapped the entire human genome. Can you guys remember this? Right? They spent billions and billions of dollars. And one really good thing came out of the Human Genome Project in terms of cancer. And that is that we found that only 5% of cancers are genetic. Nixon thought that, oh boy, we got the Human Genome Project, we're going to launch this, we're going to have it done in the 90s. And they got it done, and they spent billions of dollars on the Human Genome Project, and they said, yo, when we figure out the human genome, we got this thing. We can totally nail it, we can wipe cancer off the face of the earth. And we found out that only 5% of cancers are genetic. Okay? I'll give you another study, So 5%. So let's stop blaming our genes. Let's get to work on healing. Fair? And when doctors say, oh, it's genetic, I say, come on, man, we've known this for a long time. And people say, who are you to have this conversation with me about cancer? You're a chiropractor. And I say, exactly. I know how the body works. Okay? And I have vested interest in teaching my patients how the body works. Instead of treating the symptom, let's talk about cause. And let's get together and let's find a solution. And they say, everyone's been touched by this. I've been touched by this. You all have been touched by this in some way, shape, or form. And I say, there's got to be another answer. And let's support each other in this process. So yeah, I got a lot of vested interest in educating my patients. And that's the big word, is education. Right? Let's get educated and let's act upon it. Because it's the weight of the load that gives you the needed traction to move forward. Okay? And I always like to tell a story whenever I talk about traction. So there's a guy, his name's Ryan Knighton. He writes a book, okay? And in his book, he talks about life as a blind man. Has anyone heard of Ryan Knighton? Or heard my story about Ryan Knighton? He talks about life as a blind man, and he becomes a very famous author, and he's a motivational speaker, and he talks about his experiences as a blind man. He's traveling, and he says, he's giving a speech, he says, it's interesting being blind. And it's interesting because you never really know where you're at. And everyone else can see and navigate themselves. And he talks about a time when he was traveling to different hotels, speaking and writing. And he says, when you're blind, you have to create an image in your head. And if you get it wrong, it'll cost you your life. And he talks about how he went to sleep in a hotel one night, and he woke up and didn't know where he was, like happens to us. Happened to me over the week. I'm like, where am I? The room's all backwards. And he said, when you're blind, that's every day in your life if you get it wrong. And he talks about how he woke up in a hotel and he had been traveling so much. He had created so many different images in his head and felt through the room. He didn't know where he was. And he said the fear that he felt when he had lost his connection to the image in his head. And that's your story of health. Okay? We create this image And media creates this image, and they imprint it so deeply in our head. There's pink ribbons here, there's pink ribbons there, the NFL, this, that, the foundation. They create this image in your head. And I'm telling you right now, it's wrong. Okay? And when you get it wrong, you can shoot all day and never hit the target. All right? This is the best book that I read last year, and Dr. Mercola talks about this. And I was at a seminar last year, and I was reading this book, Tripping Over the Truth. It talks about how cancer is a metabolic syndrome, not a genetic disorder. Okay? And I was reading this book, and I was at a seminar, and Dr. Joe Mercola, the most well-known holistic healthcare doctor in the world, he takes stage, and he says, does anybody want to know the best book that I read this year? And, you know, the crowd of 500 people all raise their hand. And he puts up this slide, and I'm going, it's in my backpack right now. Okay? So I always tell people, I say, I didn't choose to do this. It kind of just finds you. All right? And the more people that we can come together with, the better we can heal. So Tripping Over the Truth, it's an easy read. It's 300 pages, and it really is broken down in a way that'll help you really kind of understand how to win this war. Well, I say war. Win this. Okay? You can get it on Amazon. It's like $12. And what's revealed, I'll give you a little spoiler alert, what's revealed is the whole history of cancer and how there are different pathways in the body. And some pathways run on sugar and some pathways run on fat. And sugar is a fermentation pathway. Okay? And the sugar burning pathway is actually an ancient pathway that was present thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, before we really had a lot of access to lots of sugars. It was an ancient survival pathway deeply embedded in our DNA. And when our diet changed around the turn of the century, and even a little bit before that, when our diet started changing into the industrialized revolution, where we started eating food that we had never eaten before, and our DNA didn't recognize this canned food and plastics in our food, etc., and all the sugar, the pathway got reactivated. And these guys have been studying this since the 30s and 40s, and it's been very well known. Okay, it talks about that pathway that fuels cancer and how cancer cannot run on the other pathway that runs on fat. It shuts down the growth of cancer. Okay, so this is our favorite guy here, Dr. Warburg, and he is very heavily quoted throughout that entire book. And it talks about how in the early 20th century he's uncovering these ancient pathways and why cancer really started ramping up around the turn of the century. Okay. They go on to explain that cancer causes the cells to become toxic. Okay, and I made the comment. I said that everyone in this room has cancer. Okay, I have cancer right now. All right, and when a cell becomes toxic, it loses its ability to the word is autophagy. Okay. The body is designed to attack weakened cells, and cancer cells are weak compared to normal cells. That's why when they nuke you with radiation and chemotherapy, those cells die. And hopefully, when they nuke you with those things, because those are poisons, they're very toxic. You know, radiation and chemotherapy cause cancer. Okay, and we know this. The radiologists know this. And when they nuke you with those things, the hope and prayer is that enough healthy cells live so that you destroy the toxic cancer cells, and enough healthy cells live so that you can live. All right. In early treatment of cancer, in the 80s and even into the 90s, one of the strategies was see how close we can get the patient to death. And then when you get them there, then start building them back up. I mean, this is not loving, serving, caring treatment, like I said, of the future. This is you're dying, and they're killing you in order to hopefully help you live in the future. Okay, so a cancer cell becomes toxic, and when it becomes toxic, the nervous system and the immune system cannot attack it like they would a cancer cell that isn't toxic and swollen. And this word autointoxication is when the body actually surrounds it and kills it. Okay? Toxic cells become malignant and they hide from the nervous system and immune system. Remember, I said keyword toxic. Okay? And we now know that toxins are one of the primary leaders and roles for how we develop cancer. It can be anything from an acute toxicity, but more importantly, when I was in undergrad school, I worked for the Small Business Development Center in my area because I was an environmentalist. And one of the jobs that'll always stick in my head, my job was to pull the MSDS, the data sheets, for all these places in the community where they could come. They had protection. If they came to us, they had protection from the EPA, so we never turned them in, never do anything. They'd come to us and they could give us everything, and they would sit down with me and I'd interview them and I'd say, okay, what do you do? What kind of chemicals do you use? And I have to pull the MSDS sheets, and I had the largest dry cleaner in the region, and it was my responsibility to get them up to EPA code so that the EPA didn't roll in and shut them down. Almost every single chemical used at a dry cleaner causes cancer. And it just baffled me, and it sticks with me. So acute toxicity and more importantly, long-term chronic toxicity causes intoxication of the cells. The cells swell. They hide from the immune system because the immune system can't get into the swollen, inflamed, irritated, and toxic cells. And then the body cannot have autophagy when the body attacks the cancerous cells because they're swollen and toxic. Okay? So toxins is really, really critical and important in this process. All right. So key tips in moving forward. So here's my prayer. My prayer is that you take one of these and you leave here feeling empowered on how we can really combat this and make change moving forward. And the people who need it, always listen, and the people who aren't ready, don't. And it's okay. Wherever you're at, it's okay, but just know that your life depends upon it, because nerve impulses is the most commonly overlooked modality in this whole process. Okay? And it's becoming more and more accepted by the allopaths, and it's a shame that everyone's not referring to chiropractors while they're going through cancer treatment, whatever it is. I don't care if you're getting chemo, I don't care if you're getting radiation, I don't care if you're healing naturally, whatever you're doing, there always should be a chiropractor on your team. And the reason is, my patients know this, I hope, the reason is because your brain is controlling the healing. And your brain is coordinating life to 76 trillion cells in your body. And your body is fighting to be healthy and well. And the brain is communicating and coordinating the attacks and the autophagy on those unhealthy cells that are growing inside of me right now. If I'm healthy, my immune system wipes them out. If I become stressed out, if I become toxic, if I go through a breakup with my wife, if I have a motor vehicle accident and I have insult to my neurological pathways, etc., if there's a block in the healing pathway, the body can't heal the way it's designed to. And it's as simple as that. I use the example, if there's a river that's really unhealthy, if you want to make a river sick and die, put a dam up. And there's only one way to bring that river back to health. Remove the dam and get out of the way. Because we see this all the time. Just because you remove a dam doesn't mean you're going to go in there and stock it full of fish and hatchery fish. And they're not designed to be in the river, and then the river becomes more unhealthy. Just get away. Just let the system heal and repair. And I tell people, that's how the body works too. If you really want to be sick, put dams up in the healing pathway, the river of life, your spinal cord. And a subluxation, a misaligned vertebra, that's a dam. Nothing good's going to get up, nothing good's going to get down. And you're only going to be as good as you can ever be. And your river's only going to be as healthy as it can ever be when there's a dam in it. Right? I always tell my patients about Muir Pond. I go, that's the sickest part of the whole of the Deschutes River, Muir Pond. Because we have 2 dams holding water in there. It's dead. There's a word, hypoxia. I know this word because I grew up on Lake Erie and studied Lake Erie in my environmental days. There's a whole section of Lake Erie that's dead. It's the dead zone. Okay? And there's a section of Muir Pond that's dead. There's nothing that really lives in there. Okay? And it's a beautiful river. It's the sickest part of the river. Toxins. The 4 major toxins are lead, mercury, glyphosate, and aluminum. Whether you're managing and dealing with cancer right now, just go all organic. Just go all organic today, and just get that out of your head. You got to get away from this glyphosate because that's the stuff that they spray all over our crops. We're just scratching the surface on this topic. It's banned in more than half the countries around the world because of how poison and toxic it is, and it's on virtually every single fruit and vegetable that we buy. Even if it's organic, it finds its way in it because it goes up into our atmosphere. Okay, so just do your best. Just go organic and pay the extra 50 cents for the tomato. Okay, and just rest assured knowing that you're not getting dosed with glyphosate. Mercury, this is my own story too, right? Pain to purpose. We talk about this. I mean, I have a mouthful of mercury, and I know that if I do not get it removed, I will, every single day of my life that they're in there, I'm becoming sicker. Okay, so I have this whole plan. I'm going to get my mercury removed. It's that important. Trust me. Don't fight it. It's not safer to leave it in. They were wrong from the beginning. They are just too high on their horse to admit that they were wrong because they've gone so far, they can't just all of a sudden say, hey, sorry guys, we were killing y'all for the past 50 years. We're sorry. So they just can't do it.
Don't they still do mercury?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Don't ever let anyone put mercury in your mouth, and formulate a game plan to get it out. I'll help you. Okay? It's my journey too. Aluminum, just don't get vaccinated. I'm just telling you right now, just don't get vaccinated. Y'all are old enough, you have a strong enough immune system that it shouldn't be even a question. You're not going to get measles. Just don't get vaccinated right now. You have to just trust me. Just don't get vaccinated. Okay? These are causing more problems than any other thing in your life probably. Just don't do it. You will be fine. I promise you. Just don't do it.
Well, and they just have come out with a new pneumonia vaccine.
Just don't do it.
And the shingles. And when they started all this, it was one time you would need it as a senior citizen for the pneumonia.
Yes.
Then it became 2. Now there's a new one, so that's a 3rd. And the shingles vaccine was supposed to work, I think, 10 years. Now there's a much better one.
Right.
Probably more aluminum.
And I have patients in my office that were damaged from the shingles vaccine and have fibromyalgia now because of the shingles vaccine. Just don't do it, especially if you're immune compromised. I can't think of a worse time to get a vaccine than if you're battling cancer. I mean, it's like self-inflicted suicide in the world of natural health. Just say no. Just don't do it. Okay? Lead, okay, I mean, we could spend months on these topics. Diet. Here's what I really want to get to. The cancer cell is believed to have 8 receptor sites for sugar. And I told you that Otto Warburg back in the 30s and 40s discovered that the sugar opens up the ancient pathway that allows the sugar, or that allows the cancer to start to proliferate in the body. Okay? So I know people, personal friends who were diagnosed with tumors and brain, nasty stuff, who completely went off sugar and went into remission for a very long time. Okay? The more sugar we eat, the more we're feeding our sickness. Right? Socrates said this, to eat when you're sick is to feed your sickness. Right? We had a mother call us while we were away over the weekend and said, my son's sick and he doesn't want to take his antibiotics and I can't even get him to eat. What should I do? And Ashley said, don't give him the antibiotics if he won't take them. So I can't legally say that. If it were my son, don't give him the antibiotics and don't feed him. Oh my gosh, he hasn't eaten in 2 days. So what? If he doesn't want to eat for 5 days, don't give him food for 5 days. He'll live. Trust me, he'll live. Okay? My dog, I tell a story, my dog got sick. I wouldn't even look at bacon. And I know people like shoving food down their kid's throat when they're sick. I go, the animals don't eat when they're sick. Why do we eat when we're sick? We're feeding our sickness, okay? So decrease the sugar. I would say if you're going through a cancer at any point in your life, just cut it out. Just cut out the sugar on every level. Diet variation. The best diet is a variation to your diet. To eat the same thing like Americans do their whole life is to eat a diet that will cause death. So you have to switch up your diet. You have to create variation. Come to my detox class. We'll go over that. Ketogenic diet. Sandy and I learned a lot about this over the weekend. There's 25 clinical trials being performed right now on different forms of cancer and the ketogenic diet. Okay, and one thing we learned, presented by a medical doctor, was that anytime a patient who is battling cancer goes on a ketogenic diet, and she's talking about medical treatment, chemo, radiation, anytime you combine ketogenic diet with chemotherapy or radiation, remission always happens better. Every single time, right, Sandy?
Yep.
Every single time.
It treats the cancer.
The ketogenic diet itself fights cancer, and it allows their drugs to work better. And that's why they got funding to do these 25 clinical trials. Right now, happening right now. Cancer patients are on full strict ketogenic diets, and some of them are choosing just the diet, and some of them are choosing the treatment, and they're finding that they're getting amazing results. And people say, why hasn't my doctor told me about that? And I go, I don't know. That's why you're here.
And that doctor was very frustrated with the fact that
Sure.
in mainstream medical, it hasn't been accepted, and she was so excited.
So excited.
We've got these chiropractors who get it and are doing it. Is making a difference.
Is it any different than with immunizations and pharmacy?
I don't know.
The doctor making money by
Do you want to?
prescribing?
Let me tell you something. In the last 6 months of a cancer patient's life, if that patient does not live, that patient is worth $250,000 to the industry. This is cancer as a business. Like, I'm only telling you that because you asked, and I know the numbers because I read this stuff. So it's about healing the individual, and just know that in the industry of healthcare as a whole, you're only worth something to the system if you're alive. Okay? And lots of these diseases, not only cancer, but lots of these diseases, most people die. In cancer, we know now, most people don't have to die. Okay? And in that model of even treating them, it's generating billions and billions of dollars to that model. Okay? And we know that in cancer, you don't even have to think that death is coming, because there's so many other options, and we know so much that we should tap into it. And you don't have to be afraid of that word. You really don't have to be afraid of that word. And here's Dr. Adrienne Scheck. She's at the Barrow Brain Tumor Research Center in Arizona. So you can look at all of our clinical trials right now. Deficiencies. So it's well known that cancer is primarily the result of a toxicity or deficiency in the body. Sugar would be a toxicity. Diet would be toxicity. The way that we think, it's toxic. Thinking is a toxin. Emotions are toxins. Deficiencies, primarily minerals in our foods, because we're not eating the way that we were designed to eat. And the human system is an electrical system, and we need certain minerals, positive and negative charges from the foods and the minerals that we consume. And healing happens in an electrical fashion, is the transmitting signals from the brain to the body heal the cells, and the cells have positive and negative poles, and there's draw and connection. It's so profound. We don't even barely know the depth of this. Okay, and mineral deficiencies are huge. And I always tell people, you have to eat healthy, and if you're not getting the healthy, you have to supplement. You have to supplement to keep these ratios and this healing and this electrical brilliance alive and well. Intermittent fasting. Okay, remember, everyone should take one of these things with them If you want to focus on toxins, come to my toxins class. If you want to focus on diet, we need to talk about diet sometime. But know that the ketogenic diet's the one that we're going to talk about. Deficiencies, if you're thinking like, gosh, I really haven't eaten the way that I wanted to, we should talk about how we can build up those deficiencies. If you're thinking, gosh, okay, I want to actually increase my autophagy. Remember, autophagy is self-inflicted suicide of the cells as the body attacks them and destroys them. Everyone should be doing some type of intermittent fasting, whether you're only eating in a window throughout the day or whether you go back to the ancient healing strategies that we learned about in the Bible. Fasting. If you really need to communicate with your source, go sit next to the tree and don't eat until the source connects with you. Right? We read about this in the Bible. We read about this in the Quran. We read about this in Indian literature and texts. Okay? Ayurvedic medicine, fasting. Okay, so we've gone away from fasting. Remember, to eat when you're sick is to feed your sickness. All right? So different types of fasting should be incorporated throughout the year, because when you give the digestive system a break, the body can then focus all of its energy on healing. Okay? Digesting food takes a lot of energy. So if you're sick, the more you're feeding yourself, the more you're taking the energy from. And I'm not saying if you're sick, don't eat for 3 weeks. I'm saying, have a conversation with someone who understands this whole process. All right? Don't eat less food, just eat less often. Give your body a break. Right? I talk about this in my detox class. I say, everyone learned that we should be eating 5 to 8 small meals throughout the day and snacking throughout the day to keep your metabolism high. It's wrong, right? It's going to go the opposite. In 5 years, Reader's Digest is going to teach everyone to eat 2 meals a day again. All right, I really think that that's true. That's what my mentors are helping me understand. Genetics, remember, 5%. So don't empower the gene. Know that it's there, but also know that the brilliant minds right now in cancer treatment outside of westernized medicine are teaching us that it's a metabolism disorder, cancer. So if we can tap into what powers the body and what powers the cell, what part of the cell creates the energy, then we can tap into the healing power. And it's the mitochondria if you're a bio geek like I am. Okay? An emotional spiritual connection. I spent all morning really tapping into this because thoughts are real. All right, in medicine, they call this a psychosomatic healing crisis, when your thoughts are so negatively impacting your healing potential, or the way that you feel, or the pain that you're expressing. So this is just so critical and important, and that's why prayer works, guys. Right? We've seen prayers and healing miracles, and I always tell people Jesus wasn't vaccinated. And Jesus created miracles, right? Or, whoever your spiritual guides are in life, it's like, my goodness, okay? So, neuromental response. So, the way that we think triggers vibrational frequencies that are measurable in the body, okay? And if we have one of these 7 mental states, we will feed our sickness to the point where we can even manifest disease and sickness. My best example is a family member. There's been lots of Alzheimer's, dementia, and breast cancer in my family. And the women in my family have always felt doomed that they would have dementia and breast cancer. And guess what? They will. They are manifesting it because they're so attached to that fear that they will manifest and it will win them. Okay? So thoughts are definitely toxic. I use the word toxemia. They're a toxic response to the body, and it is impossible to heal with one of these 7 negative thoughts patterns in your body. Impossible. Fatigue, grief, disappointment, fear, anger, hate, frustration. This was my morning reading. I just tapped into it, which is why I say, do you memorize this? I said, no, that's why I wrote them down. But I can connect with every single one of those, and so can you. Have a story of yourself or someone that you love who went through one of these neuro-emotions that completely tanked them. Can we not? I mean, I can look at this and I can think of my family member who has that. I can look at that and I can think about, at least half of my family. Right? Looking at this, I can think of someone. God, that guy's always angry. He's going to die. And one day they die of a stroke. You know what I'm talking about? You go, God, that guy was mean. Okay? And this is huge, okay? The Center for Disease Control just recently published this in 2017. 40% of cancers are linked to obesity and overweight. 40%. One of my mentors sat on the board at the Philadelphia Institute of Health as a chiropractor because they wanted an outside philosophy for healing. This is at a cancer treatment center, and they said, okay. They went around the circle, and the head of the center looked at my friend Dean. He said, so what do you think? And he said, if we could just teach people how to live, we wouldn't have to deal with this. And he goes, the head of the research, cancer, not research, but the head of the cancer treatment center said, Chocolate said, you're right. We now know that 70 to 80% of cancers are caused by lifestyle and lifestyle choices. And I'm not saying you chose to have cancer, but I'm saying toxins, deficiencies, and unhealthy lifestyle, and being attacked by one of these 7 mental neuroemotional states. Okay. I'm not going to talk anymore about cancer, but I want you to know one thing. If you're a woman in this room, I mean, men get breast cancer too. And there's a couple things that I do want to point out on this slide. Number one is that 80% of breast cancer lumps are non-cancerous. Okay? So just because you found a lump, don't think that you have cancer. Remember, fear can turn a non-cancerous lump into a cancerous lump. I don't believe that. I know that. Okay? And 1 mammogram is equal to 1,000 chest x-rays in terms of radiation. Now, I know that radiation causes cancer. And I know that a chest x-ray is sometimes, for me, to look at your nervous system, well worth it in terms of how we can remove the dams. Okay? But I don't know anyone that can convince me that every year or every 3 years when you hit over a certain age as a female that you should be blasting your fatty tissue with radiation. You can't convince me that that's a good strategy. Okay? Dr. Epstein says that each 1 radiographic mammogram exposure increases the breast cancer risk by 1%, with a cumulative 10% increased risk for each breast over a decade. So if you're getting your regular scheduled mammograms, your breast cancer risk could go up 10% in 10 years. I mean, I don't know, that's enough to just make me feel absolutely terrible. Okay? So what do? If you don't get anything out of this, just know that my friend in town is a digital thermographer. Jody DeLand. I absolutely love this woman. I told her, I said, if I ever move into a bigger space, I'm going to ask you to come and be a part of my clinic. I said, because I love you and I love what you do. Because you save breasts. All right? Remember, cancer treatment of the future is going to be soft, gentle, loving, supportive, and done in the confines of your house with the ones that you love the most. And Jody will take a picture of the area. It's extremely highly accurate. It detected 58 out of 60 cancers. That's pretty darn good. Okay? The radiologist will tell you otherwise. Don't believe them. I've studied the research. I've seen it. Jody will tell you the same thing. It's just because they don't know about it. And this costs $300 or $200 or something like that. And the mammogram costs several thousand. Right? So no money in this. Okay? She'll take a picture of the skin, exposed skin. And she'll send it off to the radiologist. You get a letter in the mail. You can sit around the table with your husband. Decide if you want to open it. If you want, he'll give you some. You can read it there, right there with your husband. Or men, men get breast cancer too. Okay. So my next tip is don't get mammograms. We don't need to anymore. Don't let them convince you that you have to. Go to Jody. She's the only one in town that does it. All right.
Where is she?
She's at the Hawthorne Healing Center. It's right by McMinimans.
Okay.
I'll give you her. I think I have some of her information here. Okay. So hopefully you leave here today making a decision on just one thing that you want to incorporate into your life, whether it's chiropractic, reduce toxic stress, changing the diet, right? Incorporating some things like building back up deficiencies, incorporating some fasting techniques, right? You don't need a healthcare practitioner just to not eat for 24 hours. You'll all live, right? And so will I. However, if you do want to have a deeper conversation, then you should probably have a conversation with someone who understands it a little bit better. Don't tie yourself to the genetic link because it ain't true. 5%. I mean, I'm not going to rest on that. Let's go after the 95. Okay? And the neuroemotional or the psychosomatic response and approach towards managing and dealing with any of these thoughts that can become toxic. And, every day I deal with all of these on some level because we're all human. And cleansing those and practicing forgiveness for whatever is going on in our lives really can set you free on your healing journey. And lots of people can speak to that better than I can, but it's just identifying it. And I just want to leave you with where we started. And it's, my prayer is that you're not going to be someone who wonders what happened to them. Because the fear tactics and the scare models of Western medicine have completely surrounded every aspect of your life, from the TV that you watch to the books that you read to the social media that we utilize to our friends, families, and loved ones that will feel so angered and upset with us if we choose something other than what they believe is best for us. So I'll leave you with this story really briefly, and then we'll wrap this up, and I'll be out of here in 5 minutes. We lost my grandmother to cancer, and my grandmother was light years ahead of her time. Changed and saved thousands of lives in her community. And I could talk to you about her for hours. And she was battling breast cancer conventionally because, well, we didn't know what else to do, and we lived by Cleveland Clinic, and they're touted as being the best treatment center in the world for cancer treatment. So Grandma went to get treated, and they were doing a renovation of the chemo wing. So we showed up one day, and there was so many people being treated for cancer that they delivered a round of chemotherapy to her in the bathroom.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And I remember my mom was saying, this is just so wrong that we're actually choosing to do this. And my grandma was so upset that, this is not how we're supposed to be treated and cared for. This is not what Jesus and God, she's very religious, would want for me to go through. So they had a sit-down meeting with the doctor, and they said, and I'm not just telling you an experience. And my grandma said, well, what else can we do? Like, what food should I be eating? What vitamins should I be taking? What else? What other options do I have? And it was mom and the grandchildren. Everyone was there. Grandpa was still alive. And the doctor looked at every single person and said, if she doesn't do exactly what I tell you she needs, she will die. Looked everyone in the face and said, she will die. Okay? And I'm not okay with that because that's not healing. And I know that still happens because I have patients who come into my clinic and tell me that they had to leave that model and they could barely get out of it because of the fear that was instilled deep within them that they had no options other than to use those conventional methods. And I'm not saying that chemotherapy and radiation doesn't save some lives, because I surely know that it does. And I know that there's other options for certain people. And I don't ever want anyone to have to feel like that. And I don't want to feel like that. Okay, so there's options, and know that the body's designed to heal. And there's plenty of people who've healed from cancers in all of those different ways, and you don't have to incorporate all those things. And if you're scared, let me know so that we can find a team that loves and supports you in the journey, because that's why we're here, right, Sandy?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I thank you for being here, and I totally, wholeheartedly, and deeply want you to know that I don't have all the answers, but I will go to battle for you. And there won't be fear involved in it. And I'm not someone who treats cancer, right? We're running live on Facebook. I don't treat cancer. I help people heal. That's it. And everyone needs and deserves help in the journey. Okay? So If anyone has any specific questions about anything we talked about, I'll stick around for 5 more minutes. And then we'll all go home and have a nice dinner. Does anyone have any burning questions?
Well, Dr. Atkins' diet is more evidently in line with what we should be doing than those that major in sugar.
Yeah. Dr. Adkins had a lot right. The biggest flaw, in my personal opinion, was that it was really high in protein, and that the message was skewed. Because if you really study Dr. Adkins, he had clear parameters for his diet, and it got manipulated somehow to think that you could eat whatever you wanted as long as you didn't eat bread or carbs. It got completely misconstrued along the way, and there was no education in it. So people would do it for a little bit. Do you have any experience with Atkins? I had some.
I've never personally done it. I've known people who have, and they kind of do okay and start to lose weight initially, but then it's really not a good, healthy long term.
Yeah, it's super high in protein, and the body can actually still break down proteins into sugars, right? And the reason ketogenic diet works, I know we didn't talk about it, I just planted the seed if you've never heard it before. The reason it works is because you're eating a high-fat diet, and the body can run very effectively and efficiently on fat. And when
our cells are made up of fat, our cells are made up of cholesterol, so we need fat
correct.
to help us function properly. Our brains, our heart, it's fat.
So the ketogenic diet gets the body, it takes you out of this state of craving and running on sugar, and it asks in a gentle way your body to adapt to a different environment and to start stimulating and producing energy in a different way. And the Atkins diet doesn't necessarily do that in the same fashion, because, like Sandy said, the body is designed to run on fat.
But wasn't his diet kind of high fat?
It was it was high fat, but higher protein.
Yeah.
Higher protein too. And a lot of people, would.
They struggle to break down that protein.
Yeah, it's right. It's also tough on the digestive system. That's a good point. So.
Too much protein is not as good for us.
Yeah, when you and it's the ketogenic diet it's I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm just saying you're asking your body to do something that it already knows genetically and behaviorally how to do, and it likes that. The body does really well with variation, like hunters and gatherers. The body does really poor when it's stuck in doing the same thing every day. Yeah. So. Okay, team.
So what you're